Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Lucas Thompson with Prime Time Patriots. Hope everybody's been doing well. It's been a while since I've been on. Why don't you do me a favor, if you would, please? And as you jump online here, go ahead and hit the like button, the love button, something to help get us out there, get some viewers watching. Please share the video if you're on Facebook, share it out to your friends. Hopefully, we'll get some more people jumping on here. And I will give you all a disclaimer this evening. My producer is out tonight, so Kaylee will not be joining me, which means she's also not handling the technical side of things. So if I make a few missteps or push the wrong button or something, please feel free to let me know. Hopefully, you can all hear me. Um, we're going to have a packed show. I'm just going to wait for a minute for some more people to jump on. Let me move my microphone a little bit so you can hopefully hear me just a little bit better. Hi, Amy. Got Barbara, Vance, Sally. Hey, everybody. We've got some people jumping on. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the viewers. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going to have a great show. I'm going to kick it off here in just a minute, but just a reminder to everybody, please like, share, love, do anything and everything you can to break Facebook's good algorithms and get us out there, get us shared to as many people as possible. I'm hopeful that I can provide a little insight on the news that's been going on for the past couple weeks in the legal world. Um, that's always the goal of this show. My vision when I started the show was to keep everybody kind of update on what's up to date on what's going on with the Supreme Court. What a perfect day for that, right? One of the possibly most consequential cases we've seen in a long time was heard in oral arguments at the court today, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Hi, Rosie. Hi, Rose. Hi, Jane, Stephanie, Carol, Diane, whole bunch of people jumping on here. We've got people from Connecticut, Texas, Kansas, Oregon. Goodness. Fantastic. All right. Somebody asked me on Facebook just a little while ago, what is an American populist? What is that all about? Well, let me tell you. So, I am ideologically very conservative, if you can just imagine, right? I mean, you can kind of see the wall behind me. What does that mean? Well, that means I believe in limited government. It means that I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in free speech. Really, what it means is at the core, I believe in liberty, free markets, and people being able to act in their own lives in their own best interests without the coercion of the government. Plain and simple. That's my ideological position as a conservative. So, what is populism? Populism is sort of there's probably a really good definition, but I'm going to explain it kind of how I understand it. Populism is kind of um, sort of like pandering, really. I mean, it's somebody taking a popular position, for example, tax the rich, or something that really doesn't have ideological roots. It just sounds good, kind of the itchy ear uh, strategy. Appeal to the masses by saying things that sound good but don't really mean much, kind of like Bernie Sanders, frankly. Populism in and of itself has never been successful in the United States, really anywhere. It's very, very difficult because one person's populism one generation will be totally different from the next. So you're not going to have sustainability, longevity, so on and so forth. I chose the words American populism to represent what I see as Donald Trump's version of making America great again, America First doctrine. It's essentially saying that in America, we do a very good job of taking care of the very rich. People who really, no matter what our policies are, don't get hurt that much, at least economically, in their lives. We also spend an inordinate amount of our resources in this country on the people in the very bottom. So the poor. There's a ton of entitlement programs. Entitlement programs are eating our government alive. It's grown our bureaucracy out of control, and our spending can't keep up with the amount of money we're able to raise through the regular process. So, what we have done is gone into extreme amounts of debt to try to finance those entitlements. But during all of that, what gets missed is everybody in the middle. I'm not going to call it the middle class. What I've always called it is the working class. People who live between I make enough money to take care of my family and I make enough money to do pretty well, but not generational wealth, right? So all those people in the middle, the blue collar folks, everybody from teachers to police officers, that's that middle class swath that I think gets ignored and has gotten ignored for far too long. When Donald Trump came along, and let me back up a little bit, when Mike Huckabee came along in 2008, he started kind of talking about being a conservative with a populist flair. So, a conservative who also saw that some of the conservative ideological positions were not tenable in the climate, the political climate as it existed in 2007, 2008. He got ignored or, you know, criticized into oblivion by everybody from Rush Limbaugh to Ann Coulter to everybody. Truth be told, that's exactly what we needed. We needed somebody with strong conservative credentials who also cared about people who are typically ignored by many conservative ideologies. Because conservative ideology is never perfect, and we haven't maintained perfect conservative ideology in politics, so we end up in a mess. So, long story short, that's what an American populist is. For me, it's another way of saying America first. It's another way of saying take care of the middle working class, the middle of America that typically gets ignored. And if we're going to spend money, we're a couple days away from a potential government shutdown. Odds are our politicians are going to come to some kind of grand agreement that's going to end up spending a bunch of money and putting the problem off to the next Congress, the next generation, my kids' kids, so on and so forth. When they do that, as they always inevitably do, they will add to the debt of the United States. But how much of that debt is in your pocket? That's my question. That's what I concern myself with as an American populist. The Fed has increased its balance sheet from about $3 trillion. That's the amount of things that the Fed owns, which typically is money. Our monetary supply comes from the Fed. The Fed basically sells it to banks. Banks get the money out in our market. The government gives the Fed the ability to print the money. It goes on the balance sheet. It is what it is. The Fed's balance sheet has gone from $3 trillion to $11 trillion in 3 years. I saw a stat that said 40% of all of the money that's ever existed in the United States monetary system was printed in the last 18 months. That could be close, it could be a little off, but it's a statistic that has merit. We know it has merit because between Barack Obama's quantitative easing, which was the Fed pumping money into our system, the stimulus from COVID, and everything else we've done to pump the system full of new, fresh printed money, we know that our monetary system has grown. And what I continue to tell people and ask people is how much of that money has created generational wealth for you? How much is it sure hasn't created much for me. I'm seeing a lot of answers and a lot of questions. And the reality is the very, very, very wealthy have taken full advantage of that new money that's flowing around in the system. The stock market is up. Um, it is what it is. Eventually, there will have to be some redistribution of that wealth. The question is, how are we going to do it? Are we going to coerce these folks into handing it over and try to divvy it out to people as whichever politician is king for a day gets to decide? Or are we going to let the free market do that? As a conservative, I think the free market can do it just fine. I think that those individuals need to continue to face the pressure that they're facing now. In order to get workers, you're going to have to pay them, number one. Number two, I think that the regulatory systems that we have in place that are forcing some of those individual corporations to do certain things, including paying taxes, including providing for their workers with certain they're not exactly taxes. I guess they are to one degree or another, but to pay for healthcare, there's different things that we've done, different things we've written into these new codes surrounding COVID that eventually will hopefully help to redistribute some of that money out to the rest of the middle class. I suppose if it doesn't, then very soon we're going to see our first batch of trillionaires. Is that going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back against rational ideological conservatism? Very well may be. So let's move on. I just wanted to answer that question because I've been asked several times. Hey, Mel, see you there. Thank you very much for jumping on. Got Debbie, Alan, thank you all. Amy, Lori, hello. Brandy, more people. So thank you for joining. Karen. Big news for the day, Supreme Court. Supreme Court had its arguments today in the Dobbs case, which is the case out of Mississippi, where Mississippi is attempting to change the age of viability for abortions to 15 weeks based on technological advances in science, based on fetal pain, and so on and so forth. They have decided that the traditional age of 22 to 24 weeks of viability should be reduced to 15. So I just want everybody to understand something right now. This is not a full scale. The question presented to the Supreme Court is not a full scale reversal of Roe v. Wade. It could be. Potentially, we could supposedly get 5 justices to agree to completely overturn Roe and take the abortion question out of the hands of the courts and put it back in the hands of the states. We could do that. I don't think that that's very likely. The better question presented, and I don't mean better in a moral sense, but in a legal sense, the better question presented is, can we change the age of viability from 20 some weeks to 15? Which I still think to one degree or another is arbitrary and capricious, but the arguments are there. And what were the arguments? Well, there are numerous. The arguments for continuing to allow abortion pretty much unfettered up to 24 weeks included the burden on the woman to carry the baby to term and then have a baby in her life that she doesn't want, presumably, if she's wanting to get an abortion. Well, the justices attacked that, and they said, we've got laws in most states that allow those babies to be given up for adoption without any finding of unfitness or anything else against the parent, safe harbor laws. Justice Roberts, which I think was a very, very telling question today in the oral arguments, it kind of shows where Justice Roberts may lean, and I'll talk about that in a second. He asked, isn't 15 weeks enough time to decide whether or not you want to get an abortion? Why is that important? Well, it's important because, as we've talked about before, the court is really broken into threes right now. There's 3 conservatives, Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas. There's 3 liberals, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Breyer. And then there's 3 that are sort of in the middle, well, more or less. Kavanaugh, Barrett, who's the newest justice, and Justice Roberts, who I would argue is much more liberal than the others. So what we're really talking about is the 3 conservatives, probably Amy Coney Barrett, because she's argued, over the years along the position of kind of backing Roe down from being so top down, heavy handed from the Supreme Court. Assuming there are 4 justices, in order to make any changes, they got to have a 5th. Now, Kavanaugh was pretty tough on the pro-choice crowd today, but very telling, so was Justice Roberts. They kind of mirrored each other a little bit. But Justice Roberts' question specifically, is 15 weeks enough time to decide whether or not to get an abortion, I think was extremely telling. Because at the end of the day, what the court could very well decide to do is simply change the age of viability, nothing else. They won't change the designation of personhood. They may not. I'm not saying won't. They may not change the designation of personhood from a baby that is outside of the womb, which is something that they've talked about in previous cases. They may not remove the case or the substantive due process right from the federal system. When Justice Blackmun wrote Roe v. Wade back in the day, what he essentially did was made it a federal question. It was no longer a state issue. It became a federal issue. became a due process right, and then it was just about balance. What laws could the states pass to maintain a balance between the rights of the mother to have complete liberty over her body and the rights of the unborn baby that's in the womb. And they pretty much decided that up to about 22 to 24 weeks, ultimately, they decided a baby up to about 22 to 24 weeks, the mother could do pretty much whatever she wanted to separate that baby from the womb to get an abortion. After 22 to 24 weeks or the age of viability, states had a bigger liberty interest in protecting that child. So states that wanted to could restrict late term abortion or really any abortion after the age of viability. So the question now becomes, is that the right way to even look at this at all? And if the three justices who would get rid of that altogether because they don't believe there's any right to abortion in the Constitution, which is personally my view, um, if they can't win the day and find two more justices to agree with them, how far can they push it? That's why I really wanted to hear this oral argument today to find out where are these judges, where are these justices' minds at? What are they thinking about? What are they seeing? And to me, it looked like Justice Roberts was seriously considering whether or not 15 weeks was a more appropriate time frame. And that could very well be the way that the decision comes down. I personally believe that it will. I think that the ruling will be 6-3 because Justice Roberts doesn't want to see, he doesn't want there to be a 5-4 strongly divisive decision. Plus, I think he'll want to write the decision. And if he is in the majority, then he'll, or, I guess, yeah, if he's in the majority, then he'll get to write the opinion if he so chooses. And he may want to do that so that he can keep it very narrow in scope. Now, that brings up something else that to me is a whole lot more problematic. For the court, it's problematic for us. And it should show you where the left's brain is always at. Senator, is it Jeanne Shaheen? I'm assuming, I just have Shaheen here, but I believe it's Jeanne Shaheen. Think it's senator from New Hampshire or somewhere back east. Said that she said, I quote, "I hope the Supreme Court is listening to the people of the United States. I think if you want to see a revolution, go ahead, outlaw Roe v. Wade, and see what the response is of the public, particularly young people," end quote. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Any of you paying attention during the election cases this past winter? Do you remember the clerks that came out and said they could hear the justices arguing in chambers about taking the election cases, and Justice Roberts in particular screaming at the top of his lungs, "If we take these damn cases, there will be blood in the streets"? Remember that? Well, apparently Senator Shaheen remembers that, because that's exactly what she's trying to do, is remind those justices that if they don't rule the way that the left wants them to rule, then there's going to be bloodshed. There's going to be a revolution. Okay. I feel like a TikTok video coming on. Listen, if that's what they want, then, it's going to have to happen, I suppose. Because at the end of the day, we're not talking about preventing women from engaging in society. We're not talking about preventing women from having sex whenever they want to. We're talking about women killing babies as a form of birth control. Because let's be honest, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about unfettered access to abortion on demand whenever they want it. It wasn't that long ago we allowed D&E abortions, and you guys can look that up. I'm not going to describe it on this video, but it's gruesome and barbaric. And we allowed it by choice in many states whenever they wanted to do it. Kansas was one of them. The state that I'm currently sitting in was one of the states that had late term abortions for a long time and allowed all kinds of gruesome techniques to be utilized to kill unborn babies for years. So if it's going to take a revolution, Senator Shaheen, to change this barbaric practice to save a few more babies' lives, then you know what? I guess that's where we're at. And I think there's a lot of people watching right now that say, bring it on. I'm not saying bring it on. I don't want there to be bloodshed. I don't want to have to worry about, some group of rioters and protesters coming down my street. For one, I don't have to I don't want to have to replenish my ammunition supply. For two, I don't want there to have to be any more Kyle Rittenhouses, but it may have to be. And apparently, if Senator Shaheen has her way, that's exactly what's going to have to happen. Stay tuned for that. Okay, so we've got some questions. Hey, Edward. Hey, let's see who all we've got. Yeah, no, Mel, you're right. A week limit, yes. Here's what we're talking. We're not talking about women not being able to do backroom abortions or leaving the babies in the dumpsters or any of the things that have happened over the years. We're not talking about stopping that from happening any more than we ever have. What we're talking about is giving the state the right to protect those fetuses after a certain period of time. But a law is still just a law. There's nobody who finds every pregnant woman, rounds them up, and prevents them from doing anything to hurt their baby until that baby's born after 15 weeks. That's never going to happen. People will still break the law. There are probably doctors who will eventually break the law. We've seen liberal doctors all across the country doing all kinds of crazy things in the face of this pandemic, not prescribing life-saving medicines like ivermectin simply because that doesn't match their politics. So if you think that changing the law in the United States to protect viability from 15 weeks forward is going to stop some of these doctors like the late George Tiller that are still out there today from doing gruesome things, you're wrong. They'll say it will. They'll say, oh, we wouldn't break the law. Oh, yes, you would. I've seen it. I've seen these doctors fighting against giving patients life-saving medications and prophylactics to protect them from COVID. Listen, I didn't want to get off on a COVID tangent or a rant tonight. I've been trying to avoid it as much as I can, frankly. I do need to talk about the mandates and how they've been blocked in all 50 states now by federal judges and what the process is going to look like for that. And I'll talk about that in a second. But listen, COVID has been touching lives around me since it started. I was in the hospital for a long time, as most of you probably know. Um, there's a lot of things that need to change relative to COVID. For one, all of us need to get in better shape. We need to quit eating the junk that we eat, and we need to take better care of our bodies, period. I think that's a big part of combating these pandemics. But it's not the only thing, because plenty of healthy people have died from COVID. Prophylactics like ivermectin and hydrochloroquine and vitamins and other things are extremely helpful, very helpful, period. Try to argue with me, you'll you'll be barking up the wrong tree. It's true. Therapeutics like bamlanivimab and Regeneron, and drugs like remdesivir, which is very expensive and doesn't work for everybody and hurts some people. Yes, you're right. But remdesivir and dexamethasone saved my life and many others' lives. So is bamlanivimab and Regeneron and monoclonal antibodies and antibody treatments coming from other people that have had COVID and numerous other things. And the reality is, we need to be doing as much as we can to save these people, not throwing them in a nursing home, sticking them on an intubator or intubating them, putting them on a respirator and letting them die. That kind of crap, where it's happened and the people's lives that has touched, I'm extremely sorry. Our public health care delivery system failed us. Period. Nurses didn't fail us. CNAs and PCTs and techs and lab techs and respiratory therapists and doctors, the individuals doing so much to help us all didn't fail us. But the overall system, the fact that politics plays such an extensive role in science, failed us. Anthony Fauci failed us. Robert Redfield, when you were in a position of power, you didn't do enough. You failed us. Deborah Birx, you failed us. Period. And the list goes on and on and on. You know who I'm not talking about? Politicians. I'm not talking about Joe Biden. I'm not talking about Donald Trump. They aren't the scientists. We had plenty of people trying to do their best. Scott Atlas, man. Dr. Atlas, if you ever somehow came across this video and saw me telling you a great big huge thank you, sir. If it weren't for people like you standing up for real science, who knows how much worse it could be. All right, rant over for now. But let's talk about that. The mandates. What happens when a federal judge, which is basically the lowest level, there's magistrate judges, but a federal judge, district court level federal judge, issues a ruling for a temporary injunction preventing something from happening, like this mandate from taking place. Well, it's like a case within a case, right? So somebody files a case and says, we want you to rule in our favor on this, getting rid of mandates, for example. The next thing that they typically argue is, in the meantime, while this case is being heard, there's the potential that this law could damage us in a way that we can't recover from, irrevocably damage us. And while this case is being heard, while it's being litigated, we want you to put a hold on this law so that we aren't damaged in a way that we can't recover from. That's what getting a temporary injunction is about. So they asked for a temporary injunction. It was granted. Temporary injunctions can be appealed. You could appeal that to the appeals court level. Then if the appeals court rules in your favor, it could go beyond that. Then you could ask for an en banc hearing, which is where all the entire appeals court hears it, not just the 3 judges you're initially assigned. Then it can go to the Supreme Court, and it can go on. It's a case within a case, right? So it's an early victory for the case within a case. It's certainly going to put some doubt in the minds of people like Joe Biden and what they're doing. It might slow them down. I believe it will slow them down. But people have asked me, now that this has happened, does that mean that Biden's going to lock us down? Is he going to lock us down because he lost this case? No, I don't think so. Because from what I've seen from the left right now, they're trying to get out from under this whole mandate thing. They're trying to get out from under COVID as much as they can. The FDA very narrowly approved a new antiviral, retroviral, whatever it is, drug from, I believe, Merck. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm wrong. Just, I think, last night, trying to approve, some things to help move us away from COVID. Now, the new variant, there's going to be new variants constantly. That's the nature of these coronaviruses, these respiratory viruses. They change all the time. Most of you know that because when you've asked in the past, why do we have an influenza vaccine but not a cold vaccine? Well, that's because the rhinovirus that typically causes most colds mutates so frequently, and there's so many different strains of it. We'd never be able to protect ourselves completely. And because the cold virus isn't strong enough to normally kill people, we're not all that concerned about it. Our natural immunities take care of it. But this coronavirus will mutate frequently and rapidly, apparently. There's going to be numerous strains of it. Could there potentially be a strong one that comes back and kills like the original COVID? Maybe. But the whole time that this is happening, our body's immune system is adjusting and adapting as well. So keep that in mind. But I think that the left wants out from under the whole thing. I think they see a bloodbath. We'll call it a red wave. How about that, Blake? You'll love that. We've got a big red wave coming in 2022, and I think that that's going to be bad enough. But if they were to turn around and lose the White House in 2024, maybe even lose the Senate, and end up in a situation where they could potentially have a Donald Trump again with a bunch more MAGA type conservatives in the House and Senate, man, that's like a political realignment. That's a very, very, very bad day for the left, and they don't want that to happen. So it's odds are you're going to start to see them kind of pulling back on this a little bit, and I think this gives them some cover to do that, because now they can blame Republican judges for anything that they back off on the mandates. That's the way I see it going, and I could be wrong, but it happens. Last thing I want to talk about, then we'll go through a couple of these questions. The government shutdown. So we're a couple days away from when the money was supposed to run out from the last time we agreed on extending the debt ceiling or raising the debt limit so that we could borrow more money and print more money and go further in debt to try to pay all these crazy entitlements that we've got that we keep trying to add to the infrastructure bill and everything else. Um, Everybody's talking about, here's a quote from, I think, a Fox News article: Republicans see an opportunity to defund President Biden's vaccine mandate on the private sector. Republicans are planning to object to a quick consideration of a stopgap measure to extend funding into early 2022 unless Democratic leaders agree to deny money to enforce the mandate. Forget that. We got to think a lot bigger than that. The mandate gets the press, and it's great and it's fantastic, but we need to get a whole heck of a lot more out of this deal if we're going to raise the debt limit again and move this fight back into 2022, an election year. One of the things that I would really like to see is this additional Build Back Crappier bill go away completely. So maybe they need to take a few provisions of that, like extending the increased child tax credit. Some of the other provisions, maybe even extend the loan repayment stop, halt, whatever, for a few more months, something. Do something to appease some of the folks that are so strong for this Build Back Crappier bill. Tie that into this debt ceiling agreement, move it on, just quit fighting about it, move it on past the 2023 or 2022 election cycle, and get us to sometime, say, next May. And then tell everybody when we run in 2022, if you want to just keep spending ourselves into oblivion and get to the point where inflation is so out of control that none of you can afford anything, then vote for the left. Go ahead and give the Democrats the House back. Go ahead, keep Nancy Pelosi in power. If you want to see another 2 years like we've already seen under Biden. But if you want to change, if you want things to get better, if you want us to do better, then change who's in power. Starts with the House and the Senate in 2022 and culminates in another White House run, in my opinion, by Donald Trump in 2024. Make it happen. Give Donald Trump the mandate that he didn't get in 2016, and let's change this game once and for all. With Paul Ryan out of the way, Mitch McConnell hopefully out of the way by 2024, 2026, let's change the damn game once and for all. Pie in the sky hopes, right? All right. So, Mel White. Thank you, sir. You're one of the people that's been asking me some questions on Messenger. So, yes, I want to talk about this. A lot of you can raise your hand right now. I can't see you, but I can feel you raising your hands when you say, I think there's a lot of smoke screens. Surely you'll have to go back and watch the video. We talked about that at the start. There's a lot there, but very important what's going on with the Dodd case out of Mississippi. But Mel, your question was basically, is all this stuff going on a smokescreen for the Epstein sidekick? What's her name? Giselle, Jesline, I don't know, Maxwell or whatever the hell her name is. Who really cares? She needs to go to prison. All the people that her and Epstein did business with for years and years and years that were involved in or covered up any of their crimes, they all need to go to prison. Maxwell, thank you. Will they? Hopefully. I think she will. I think Maxwell for sure will. She'll probably end up getting Clinton while she's in there, be my guess. But nonetheless, yes, I do believe some of what happens in politics and some of the media hype on certain things that don't make any sense are cover-ups. We didn't hear anything about the school shooting after it happened. I mean, there's like very, very little coverage. There's nobody out there talking about securing our schools. We have the typical, race hustlers and gun grabbers out there crying about how we got to take guns away and basically limit people from being able to defend themselves and everything else. That's always going to be out there. But typically there's people talking about these school shootings for weeks in the media, and it hasn't happened. they're just kind of sitting out there. We had the Waukesha parade attack, domestic terrorism attack on the Christmas parade in Wisconsin that was a direct response to the Rittenhouse verdict. Numerous things going on the media doesn't want to cover. So what are they left with? Well, Congress is in session, so I guess they're going to pick on this stuff. They'll probably be blasting about the shutdown for the next several days. Yes, I do think a lot of it's a smokescreen because I think there's so many people implicated in the Maxwell case. High powerful people from Bill Gates all the way down, numerous CEOs and CFOs who have either resigned prior to now or are doing it right now as we speak. Numerous people that are involved. I mean, frankly, I've seen this before. The market is at a high level, inflation is high. There's signs that there's a recession coming. When the recession hits, nobody wants to be the CEO that watches their stock price plummet. So I feel like a lot of these people are quitting not because of Maxwell and whatever she may or may not have on any of them. I think a lot of them are doing it because they're scared of where we're heading with the economy in 2022. I think it's going to be a rough year for a lot of corporations and a lot of businesses. I just hope it isn't for mine or any of yours. Okay. Yep, they haven't said who the kid is. They aren't talking anything about it. Listen, when was the last time we had a mass shooting in a courthouse that's protected by metal detectors and law enforcement? When was the last time we had one in an airport terminal? I'm not talking about as you drive up in your freaking Uber. I'm talking about through the security gates, waiting to jump on your plane. How much do you feel like you're a sitting duck for a freaking mass shooting? Not much. Tons of law enforcement, TSA, everybody else all around, metal detectors everywhere. Hard to even sneak a pair of toenail clippers on the plane anymore. So feel pretty safe, don't you? Wouldn't it be wonderful if our kids felt that safe sitting in school learning about long division? Hopefully not CRT, which is what they're teaching in Detroit, but that's for another show. We will get into that. We could secure our schools if we wanted to. We pass bond issues for multi-million dollar gyms. There is a glass administrative building worth tens of millions of dollars in the Kansas City, Kansas area, in the school districts in Overland Park, Lenexa, one of them fancy rich school districts. They spend a lot of money on a lot of stupid crap, but they don't protect our kids. So until we get to the day where we really want to have an honest discussion about what that costs, what that looks like, I'm not interested in even engaging. I tried to engage a guy on a news site. I think it was WHIO out of Dayton. He was doing the typical take everybody's guns. You know, you guys care more about your guns than your kids. I said, I care about the kids. I also care about my guns. You're not going to take my guns, but I can tell you how we can protect the kids. And his response was something like, parents pay taxes. I'm like, what in the hell are you talking about? And I guess it reminded me why Rush Limbaugh had to speak very slowly when talking to liberals from Rio Linda. Sometimes he had to spell things out for him too. Sorry if you're from Rio Linda. I love Rio Linda. All right. Hey, last question here. Pilot did mention Gates. Why do you think? This pilot wants his 15 minutes of fame, Lori, so you know how it's going to be. Mention Donald Trump, say Donald Trump 15 times, and you can get on CNN for at least a week, right? God, we all see through that junk. That crap doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore. Kid had a lot of issues. Yeah, I'm sure he did. Connie, you're right. I mean, that's the second thing. I think the first thing is you secure our schools, right? Secure our schools, make them safe. Then I've seen bullying issues in my kids' schools. We got to start stepping up as parents and holding these administrators accountable. If we're going to have 5 assistant principals in a normal size school, then they need to be doing something, right? So I just had a conversation. I'm gonna kind of close with this. I had a conversation with a assistant principal in one of my kids' districts very recently, and she said it's clear to me that the coach doesn't have a, how did she put it? the coach isn't maintaining control of his locker room. I said, well, we've identified the root cause of the problem. Now, what are you going to do to correct it? Well, I'm going to talk to him. I said, how about this? How about we tell our coaches who get an extra maybe $1,500 a year to coach a sport? It's a pittance. You're doing this for a reason. If it's for the $1,500, then, take the money you've already been paid and hit the door. But if it's because you truly want to be a coach, then understand a big part of coaching is controlling your locker rooms, controlling the hazing and the nonsense that goes on within these sports. If this gets out of hand and somebody gets hurt, it's your ass. I expect to see a plan for how you're going to get things under control. It's not that difficult. We do it in business all the time, every day. If we can't do it in our schools, then what the hell good are we? These are our kids. They need to be learning, and they need to be doing it safely. And I mean socially learning. I mean learning about how accountability works, learning about how to manage up. A kid should be able to have a discussion with a teacher about why the teacher is being too lazy making copies of worksheets out of a workbook and handing them out and saying turn them in at the end of class while they read their Facebook is not good enough. And if a student steps up and says, hey, you need to do better, I do it with my boss. If you're out there listening, hey, but I do it. So why can't you? Why can't our kids do it? They need to be taught to do it with respect. They need to be taught how to self-actualize. They need to be taught how to share knowledge, how to challenge, how to grow. If we're not teaching them these things, how the hell do we expect them to exist in a free market? We don't. All right. Sorry. Final rant complete. Homeschooling, Christian schools, yes, absolutely. If only we could all control everything about our kids' education, that would be fantastic. I don't want to make it sound like I think it's easier than it really is. If you have the means to put your kids in a private school where you have a lot of say in what it is that they're learning, please do it. It's an investment that's worth it. If you have somebody at home that can teach your children and somehow make sure that they still get the same social interactions that are necessary to grow as a kid, fantastic. Please do it. Please do it. All right. So next week, special show. I'm going to try to have a guest on, but I'm really going to dig and dive into this critical race theory stuff. Why am I doing that? Well, let me tell you. The left right now is at a crossroads with CRT. Some of them, and they're typically the more traditional Joe Biden types, are still trying to pretend like CRT doesn't exist. The progressives that are fresh out of Ivy League schools, Brown and Harvard and wherever, Penn State, whatever it is, those people are not only fully accepting of CRT, but they think we need to push it wider. It needs to go out to more school districts. More people need to be learning about it. That we can't even teach English and language arts, and it's not just social studies, but math. You can't even teach math without critical race theory to these people. That crossroads is eventually going to culminate in them taking a position. And I'm here to tell you they're going to take the position of moving forward with CRT, in my view. I think that's the direction they're going to ultimately go. I think the progressives have pretty much proven to the Democrat Party that they are the ones in control. And we need to be ready for that. When somebody asks you, okay, smart guy, what is critical race theory? What is CRT? You keep talking about it. What is it? Well, I want to give you some ammunition. Okay. I want to hopefully share some of my knowledge and my understanding about what it is, and hopefully arm you with some things that you can throw right back at those feeble-minded progressives. All right. That's it for tonight. Thank you all so much. Again, this has been Law with Lucas, Primetime Patriots. Please share this video. Get it out there to as many people as you can. If you have questions, feel free to reach out on Primetime Patriots Facebook page. We are on Telegram. We are on Rumble. We are all over the place. Reach out to us. Get a hold of us. Ask your questions, and I will be absolutely honored to answer your questions on this show. We were off typically around the holidays, so that was last week for Thanksgiving, and then kind of the week before there was a lot of other things going on. But my goal is to do this every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So I love you all. I really, truly do. I thank you for giving some time to the show. I thank you for your questions, your engagement. It means a ton to me. Watch for Kaylee and Blake. They were on today. If you didn't see their video, you should watch it. They have some amazing, fabulous information on those shows. It's riveting to me. I mean, I love watching my wife on camera, but I'm saying that the stuff that I learn a lot from both of them. I feel like I'm a pretty involved guy and I know a lot about what's going on in the world, but I always learn something from Blake and Kaylee, so be sure to catch them too. Thank you all so much. God bless you all. God bless this amazing, fabulous, wonderful country. I will talk to you all very soon, and I am going to try to figure out how to get out of this. There we go. There it is. Thank you all very, very much. Have a great night.